Hey guys, welcome back to the Spotlight Kid. Today we're going to be ranking the studio albums of the awesome Mercyful Fate. I will say before we get started that Mercyful Fate is one of my favorite bands, and I really like all of their albums. So even if something's lower down the list, doesn't mean that I don't get some enjoyment out of it. There's definitely a gap between the top few albums. I think for most people that is the case. But Merciful Fate is one of the reasons they're one of my favorite bands is because they're extremely consistent and have been throughout the years. So with all that being said, let's get stuck into it. Coming in at number 7 is Dead Again, released in June 1998. This was featuring the lineup of, only the two original members of King Diamond and Hank Sherman on guitars, obviously. Then you got Mike Weed coming in from the King Diamond band on guitars, Charlie D'Angelo on bass, and Bjorn T. Holm on drums. This album is, it's got plenty of good stuff on there. It's certainly not a bad album. It's a good album, and some of the standout tracks for me are the opener, Torture 1629. The Night is an epic track. Love that one. Banshee is cool. Mandrake, Crossroads is pretty killer. It's the only Mercyful Fate album where there's a song that I actually don't like, and that's the title track, Dead Again. I think it's a bit, I don't know, it's something about it just feels meandering, it just feels, I don't know, I just can't get into it. I've tried to, but I will say about this album, like the one criticism I have of Dead Again is it does feel a little like Mercyful Fate by the numbers. It feels a little just compared to the rest of the catalog. Compared to other bands, it's still a great album on the whole. Although the overall it just feels a little lacking compared to the rest of the catalog. Still a good album, but to be honest, I don't reach for it very often, pretty rarely actually. Anyway, coming in at number 6 is the follow-up, 9, which was released in June 1999 with the same lineup. And, this is a really heavy album, very metallic, in your face, and I think they definitely lifted their game on this one from Dead Again. It has a lot more, in my opinion, a lot more life, a lot more oomph. The album opens up with this awesome 3-pronged attack with Last Rites, Church of Satan, and Sold My Soul. Also, you've got awesome tracks like Buried Alive on there, and the whole album is pretty killer, really. It's like pretty consistent, but those are the standout tracks for me. Definitely worth checking out. It's still not. It's still, for me, it still feels kind of separate from the catalog, just like Dead Again does, because of the lineup. It's missing the magic of Sherman and Denner together. Those guys, with King Diamond, Sherman and Denner, that grouping really produces magic, in my opinion. And with Denner missing, it's just not quite the same. Mike Weed does a great job. He's a great guitar player. I really like him in King Diamond band, but that special magic's not quite there. Anyway, coming in at number 5 is the awesome Into the Unknown. This is a great album. It's basically the same lineup, except you've still got Michael Denner on the guitars there. There's no Mike Weed. And the magic is there. Every track on this album, from here on in, from from 5 until the number 1 spot, in my opinion, that the albums are pretty much perfect. Like every song on the track, and when I say perfect, I mean every song on the album is good, and there's nothing that I want to skip. And production is pretty good, performances are good. So yeah, The Uninvited Guest, what a great song that is, just to kick off an album. Just and then The Ghost of Change, another fantastic. All of them. Listen to The Bell, 15 Men and a Bottle of Rum, a really sort of a bit of a unusual track for Mercyful Fate, but it works and it's great. The title track, Into the Unknown, epic. Under the Spell, Dead Time, with that whole spooky, kids theme. The Holy Water, and part 2 of the Mad Hour of Cthulhu. All great. It's a great album, and any fans of early Mercyful Fate who haven't dived into those 90s albums really can't go wrong with checking out Into the Unknown. Then we come to Time. So from here on in the 4th position, I should say, it was really hard for me to choose between 3 and 4, actually. And also 1 and 2 is going to be very hard. But in the end, I decided to put Time in the 4th place. It's a perfect album as well. Nightmare Be Thy Name, the Angel of Light. It's so good. So I find myself singing that all the time. Just walking through the streets, just start humming it. Witch's Dance, The Mad Hour of My Demon, Time, The Preacher, Lady in Black, Mirror, The Afterlife, and to wrap it up with Castillo del Montes as the awesome last track on the album. This thing is a beast. Released in October 1994. You had the lineup. The lineup this time was basically the same, except you had Snowy Shore on the drums. And the magic there, Sherman and Denner doing their thing, shredding all over the place. Just killer stuff. Killer album. So coming in at number 3 is the mighty In the Shadows, released in June 1993. This one has basically the original classic lineup minus Kim Raz on drums. It's credited on the album as Snowy Shore, but he didn't play on the album. It was actually Morten Nielsen playing the drums. And man, this album is killer. It's so damn good. It is, unfortunately, there was a magic there with Kim Raz on drums, and he really brought that classic Mercyful Fate sound. He was a major part of that. And I don't think really any drummer since has really captured it perfectly, but that's not to say that these albums, the 90s albums aren't amazing and great and definitely worth checking out. And I know a lot of people, a lot of older fans of Mercyful Fate who were into them in the 80s have overlooked some of these albums, and it's a great shame. You need to go and check out some of these albums, especially In the Shadows. It's great, and it's basically the same band minus Kim Raz on drums. Egypt, what a killer song. It's one of Mercyful Fate's best, one of my favorites anyway. The Bell Witch, great. The Old Oak, Shadows, A Gruesome Time, 13 Invitations, A Room of Golden Air, Legend of the Headless Rider, so cool. And Is That You, Melissa, which is the sort of part 2 of Melissa from the Melissa album. And they have on some versions of the album the bonus track of Return of the Vampire, which actually has Lars Ulrich on drums. And yeah, as I said in my review of this album, I am not a huge fan of his version of it. However, the band sounds great. Anyway, it still sounds good. It still sounds good. I just like the original version better, which you can find on the Return of the Vampire album, like, you know, rarities stuff. This album is killer. Go check it out. It's a masterpiece. So now we get to the really hard part, choosing 1 and 2. It really could go either way. I kind of like these 2 albums, and I think most people feel the same way about this. They kind of go together. They're kind of interchangeable. You know, if you ask me on another day, I might do it differently. But today, in number 2 position, it's going to go to Melissa, which was released in October 1983. You've got the classic lineup: King Diamond, Hank Sherman, Michael Denner, Timmy Hansen on bass, and Kim Raz on drums. And I mean, these guys just produced something really special. And when this album dropped, well, they'd already sort of shown their colors with Nuns Have No Fun, or the self-titled, or whatever you want to call it. But this album, really, it's one of those albums that back in the day, you really didn't want your parents seeing. You know, it just seemed so evil and heavy and you know, scary, but just so awesome. I mean, it's a perfect album. It's a perfect album. I mean, how can you go wrong with songs like Evil, Curse of the Pharaohs, Into the Coven, At the Sound of the Demon Bell, Black Funeral, Satan's Fall, Melissa. I mean, it's just so good. The version I have has Black Masses on it, and man, it's just a perfect album. And finally, coming in at the number 1 spot, well, of course you know what it's going to be. Don't Break the Oath, released in 1984. Classic lineup again, and this album for me is another example of a perfect heavy metal album. And this and Melissa together are you know, absolute staples of heavy metal. You need, if you're a heavy metal fan, you need these albums. And I know King Diamond's voice is an acquired taste. It took me a while to get it as well. I mean, I always liked the music, and I had the albums, and same with his band. But it took me a while to really click with them. But once you get used to it, it's just so damn good. And you know, I mean, look, Dangerous Meeting, that's one of my favorite King Diamond songs. Nightmare, Desecration of Souls, it's just so heavy and awesome. Night of the Unborn, The Oath, I mean, what a track. Gypsy is really sort of catchy and kind of the poppiest King Diamond song. Mercyful Fate track, at least from this era, but man, it's so good, one of my favorites. Welcome Princes of Hell, great. To One Far Away, nice little interlude, and you know, Come to the Sabbath. I mean, what a mighty way to finish this album. And yeah, today it's my favorite. It's often my favorite, but Melissa is right there. They're right there together. So that's it. So let's go back through them. Number 1 is Don't Break the Oath. Number 2, Melissa. Number 3, In the Shadows. Number 4 is Time. Number 5, Into the Unknown. Number 6, 9. And number 10, Dead Again. So that's it. Thanks for joining me to rank this awesome catalog. Like I said, if you got stuck on the 80s albums and haven't checked out the 90s stuff, do yourself a favor and go and check out some of these albums right now, because they are awesome. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining me, and until next time, stay metal, and see you next time.